What's going on YouTube? Both Toyota and their luxury division Lexus have long offered very comprehensive lineups of SUVs. But if there was one weak area, it was that none of them offered particularly large third rows and cargo areas compared to the competition. Well, that has now changed with the introduction of the all-new Toyota Grand Highlander and the related Lexus TX, which are both very large. But now we need to know, is the TX worth the price premium over its mainstream sibling? That's the question we're going to answer today. Now, like always, let's quickly establish the pricing and trim levels right from the start. For the Grand Highlander, we have the fully loaded Platinum Hybrid Max trim, which comes in at a pretty luxurious price of just under $60,000. But, as you'd expect, the prestige of a Lexus will demand a higher price tag. In order to get the equivalent features to the Grand Highlander, you need to pick the TX Luxury trim, which is offered in the 350 configuration. After adding a few more options, we arrive at a price tag of $67,239. By the way, if you want quotes from local dealerships and access to invoice pricing info for these two models or any vehicle, we have a tool on our website to do just that. Check the link in the description for more info, but as far as this comparison, it will be conducted in an objective way. We have done our best to weigh the points awarded throughout in major and minor categories, but at the end of the comparison, we will sum up with our thoughts and revisit the large price difference for a value assessment. Starting here with the exteriors, it should be pretty obvious that this is not an exercise in badge engineering, and only well-informed people, such as yourself, will know that they are related. The Toyota goes for the tougher and boxier design, inspired by the RAV4 and 4Runner. The TX debuts a new front-end design for Lexus with what they call a unified spindle grille and LED headlights that deviate from the normal triple beam design on their other models. All lighting elements are LED on both, including LED fog lamps below. Moving to the side, styling differences mean that the TX is slightly longer than the GH, but the big story is that both of them are very large and offer the most interior space in their respective lineups. We will get to that later in this comparison, but as far as visual elements, we have 20-inch alloy wheels on both of them. The TX has a floating roof effect as we move around to the back, and as far as the rear, this is the most similar view. Both have small upper spoilers, exposed wipers, and fully LED tail lamp clusters. The TX has more painted surfaces on the bumper, and the Grand Highlander has exposed exhaust outlets. Now, checking out some of the individual features, both of their mirrors have heating, blind spot monitoring, and power folding. The only difference is that only the Lexus includes auto dimming. Safety is very important, so in addition to blind spot monitoring, both also include the latest active safety features. And beyond safety, both are also including convenience features, such as the new traffic jam assist function for hands-free driving under 25 miles per hour, and remote smart parking via your smartphone on the Lexus. Towing-wise, both models can handle up to 5,000 pounds, and warranty-wise, the Lexus is covering things for a longer term. But the luxury and comforts of the cabin are far more important than the exteriors, so let's get to that. But first,
if you're new here, we're brothers, and we've been reviewing cars since we were 12
and 16. We may be young, but we love cars.
And we'd love for you to subscribe to be a part of our Car Confections family. Let's learn a lot, have some fun with all the latest cars.
As we walk towards the interiors, both models have smart entry as you'd expect, plus the newest digital key system for using phone as key. One interesting thing about the TX is that it has electronic door handles, so the handle itself won't move when you grab it. Once we open up the doors, we are greeted with cabins that look premium and also functional. As you probably expect, the Lexus is the one to have the premium advantages, since its seats are covered in supple semi-aniline leather versus a leather and suede combo in the Toyota. And its seats are also 14-way power adjusting instead of 10 ways. Regardless though, both of them have heating, ventilation, and memory. Once we fully climb inside, we can get into overall material quality. The Grand Highlander offers a somewhat premium environment, but doesn't have a lot of fluff, using a mixture of hard and soft touch plastics, as well as faux carbon fiber trim to accent. TX elevates beyond that, with a good deal more padded surfaces, leather trim, and Alcantara accents. Even though we wish it used more than just a super tiny wood accent, the materials definitely exceed the Grand Highlanders. After startup, you'll see 12.3-inch digital gauge clusters on both, with slightly different graphics. Both also have large head-up displays, although the TX's allows for a lot more functions to be controlled through it. Moving back to the heated steering wheels, we have totally different designs, and the Lexus has power adjustment. Now let's talk about overall interior storage, which is a huge area that the Grand Highlander excels in. Don't get me wrong, the TX is also very versatile with its removable cup holders, but the Grand Highlander simply delivers more, with a massive center console, large front bin, and even a passenger side storage shelf. One of the rare things that's exactly the same between them are the electronic shifters. Both also have 360-degree camera systems when in reverse. 3-zone climate control systems are on board, but the Toyotas are easier to use since they are all physical knobs and buttons. And speaking of controls, that now brings us to the volume knobs, so let's give the audio systems a sample. As you might expect, the Mark Levinson is going to be far ahead of the JBL, and it has nearly twice the speakers. Now let's take a look at these screens. Both of them have large ones, but the Lexus has a larger one at 14 inches versus 12.3 inches. But size aside, they have the newest Toyota infotainment system, with navigation and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Last but certainly not least for the front of the interiors, both models have digital rear camera mirrors and large panoramic sunroofs. But now let's move into the rear spaces, because this is probably the reason you're interested in SUVs of this size. The two of them become a lot more similar in these areas, starting with leg and headroom measurements, which are identical and quite spacious. The features list is also largely the same. There are rear climate controls, vents, 2 USB ports, sunshades, and heated rear seats. There are some differences though that will come down to your personal preference. As you can see, the Grand Highlander has captain's chairs, and the TX has bench seating. On Platinum models, the Toyota is locked into captain's chairs, while the 350 Lexus models all start out with the bench seating and have the additional option of adding captain's chairs. We will give the Lexus a half point for giving people the choice. But Grand Highlander comes standard with one feature that's attached to those captain's chairs: ventilated rear seats. Furthermore, the Toyota includes a household power outlet back here, which requires the F-Sport version of the TX, and it has a removable center console. Let's head into the next row of seats. Again, we have the same space figures, which are extremely impressive. Compared to both models' rivals, they are offering more space and comfort than pretty much anything else. Speaking of comfort, the TX has opted to go for 2 wider third row seats instead of 3 smaller ones in the GH. Whether or not that's a good trade-off will be determined entirely by how many bodies you need to move around. Lastly, both have rear vents, USB ports, and reclining abilities. Now moving out back, we see a repeat from the second and third rows in terms of space. Space in the TX is exactly 1 Stanley Cup less than the Grand Highlander, also known as a half cubic foot. and a completely negligible difference. Guys, these are huge numbers that dwarf most of the competition, no matter if we are talking luxury or mainstream segments. The main thing that's going to set the TX apart from the GH is the power folding third row, which is something Toyota is not offering. Both have spare tires, but only the Grand Highlander has a 1500 watt outlet in the back as equipped. Alright, that's it for the interiors, so now let's take this close race to the streets. While the Toyota and Lexus largely share their powertrain lineups, the pricing discrepancy makes a big difference in what you can get. As mentioned at the beginning, for under $60,000, we have a Hybrid Max Grand Highlander, meaning we have a powerful and efficient hybrid system. That same powertrain is also available on the TX, but in order to get it, you have to choose the 500h F Sport Performance model, which starts at $70,000. To get full luxury features, you'd be looking at about $78,000, which is a long way of explaining why we are using the TX 350 in this comparison. With its 275 horsepower 2.4-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, it will be lagging behind the Hybrid Max Grand Highlander with its 362 horsepower. Alright, and just like that, we're up to 60 miles per hour in the Grand Highlander. So even though this is a big gal, she can move when she has 362 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. That's a lot of power for this segment, for sure. So just to remind you guys from the spec dump, what this is a 2.4-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. We have a front electric motor. We also have a rear e-axle. All that goes together to give you the power figures I just cited.
Torque really pushes you back in your seat.
Yeah, totally feels adequate. I mean, if you're wondering, oh goodness, this is a big 3-row SUV, and it is, you know, combine that with the 4-cylinder engine, is it going to feel underpowered? The answer to that, I think, to me, feels like no. I think that it definitely doesn't feel underpowered. What you might not like as much as the sound of the engine, perhaps, because it is a 4-cylinder. It's not going to sound maybe as silky smooth as a V6. As far as other elements, torque and packaging requirements mean that the Grand Highlander Hybrid Max is actually rocking an old-school 6-speed automatic transmission, compared to an 8-speed in the TX. While the 6 is still smooth, the TX's transmission is quicker and has more gears to choose from. As I was saying, we have an 8-speed automatic transmission that works quite nicely here with this 350 model. We're just in the standard drive mode right now. Put your foot down, you know, you wait like a little half beat there, but it gets you into the right gear, gets you up to speed nicely. And a traditional 6-speed automatic as well as part of this powertrain. So it's a very interesting setup that really gives this a performance edge, unlike most things in the segment. But it's definitely not all about speed, since comfort is more important for family haulers. In this regard, both absolutely nail the ride quality, with extremely plush rides that isolate out all but the largest potholes. Now we're on a pretty smooth stretch of highway here, but that hasn't been the case for the entire day. We've driven this around quite a lot and hit a lot of different kinds of road surfaces, which has really demonstrated to us we have phenomenal ride quality on board. Toyota has really emphasized this. Of course, you know, the regular Highlander is known for being so comfortable, so smooth. I'm happy to say that those same attributes carry on for the Grand Highlander as well. You hit big bumps and stuff like that, you kind of see them, you hear them maybe, but you don't get much in terms of like vibration that's going to enter the cabin. And the seats themselves, very comfortable as well.
But I do want to just also talk about your ride quality. You're probably curious about that because this segment is all about just family comfort and all of those things. It really knocks it out at the park. There's a lot of really rough roads down here in Austin. There's a bump right there in the road. it does a great job of soaking it up. The seats are very comfortable. I do want to point out, if you want adaptive dampers, you can get those as standard equipment on the F Sport Performance model.
As you would expect, that does mean the suspensions are fairly soft when cornering. However, the TX has the Lexus driving signature, meaning that its steering is more direct and body roll is more controlled versus the Grand Highlander. If you're wondering about athleticism, especially compared to something like the Grand Highlander, our time behind the wheel, I think, has shown that Lexus spent more time refining the driving characteristics. The Grand Highlander feels bigger behind the wheel, has a more body roll, you could say. That being said, especially in the standard version, it's not sporty in any way. It's definitely, a big SUV that you feel is relatively big but controlled, and when the steering is in normal mode, it's very lightweight. In addition to having comfy rides, let's talk about the noise levels inside the cabins. Even as impressive as the Grand Highlander is, at 55 decibels, the Lexus steps things up, or should I say down, significantly. It achieved 53.7 decibels at 55 miles per hour, which is greater than the 1 decibel difference where it becomes noticeable to the average adult.
All right, official Car Confections sound level reading. Took a little bit longer. I wanted to make sure we were still on the smoother part of the pavement, and the fan speed was on 153.7 decibels.
All right, looks like we've settled at 55 decibels even.
And lastly, for fuel economy, this is one of the coolest things about the Hybrid Max setup. Despite making big power, it still gets great fuel economy, beating the TX by 4 mpg combined. Additionally, the Lexus is asking for premium fuel, while the Toyota is fine with regular. Before we wrap up, let's hit a few last odd and end elements. 2 considerations in favor of the Lexus are the intangible benefit of having luxury brand prestige, as well as the tangible benefit of an elevated dealership experience over Toyota. Are those things and the extra features we mentioned throughout the comparison worth the $7,779 price difference? Well, that's up to you to decide, but to compensate for that discrepancy, the Grand Highlander will receive a half point per $1,000 or 4 points. But as always, I'll remind you that if money doesn't matter as much to you, then feel free to disregard these points. So there you have it. The objective winner is the Lexus TX. But when the value proposition is considered, the Grand Highlander really fights back. This was an exciting one throughout. So let's go ahead and summarize which one you should pick. Your winner should be the TX if you want those high-end luxury touches. Also, if you like that excellent audio system coming from the Mark Levinson sound system, you have quieter and better ride and handling characteristics on board, and that Lexus Prestige.
Now, the Grand Highlander should be your winner if you want the Hybrid Max powertrain for pretty much the Lexus Turbo price, because even in this comparison, the Lexus was still more expensive despite having the lower powertrain setup. Additionally, it is going to have a tougher and more macho design, so if you don't want that streamlined look, the Grand Highlander should be your choice, and you can get up to 8-passenger seating with the Grand Highlander. But that's going to be where we leave off on this comparison video. We want to know which one you're taking. Are you taking the luxury Lexus TX 350, or are you going to take the Grand Highlander Hybrid Max? That's really quite the debate here, and that's what we hope to have kind of answered in this comparison video. Now, if you're new to the channel, we would really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button down below, because by subscribing, you're going to get notified when we make new comparison videos, as well as other types of automotive content I'm sure you won't want to miss out on. We'd love for you to be a part of our family, and if you're already a part of our family, thanks so much for your continued support. We'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.